it now means nothing. He has undermined that to such an extent that do people care about it anywhere in the world? They just say, well, he did it. And effectively, he set an example for people throughout the world that actually you can ignore it. It doesn't matter, just carry on. And if you make money out of it, that's even better. And that's the legacy as far as I'm concerned. Now somebody might want to ask the question, well, why can't we prosecute him? Well, I was amongst a number of lawyers at the time who went to The Hague. The problem about it is, yes, it's an unlawful war, but the offence internationally of aggression has not been agreed. And one of the people objecting to it was, of course, America, because they'd end up in the dock as aggressors. So that's never got onto the statute books. It's agreed as an offence, but you can't prosecute it. What's left is the war crimes to do with white phosphorus, you saw that, and also cluster bombs is not mentioned in here, but basically all the other weapons that were used, never mind the torture and rendition and so on, so many of it. There's a great deal that could be prosecuted. Now, we put in a petition. The problem with the International Criminal Court is, as an individual, I can't bring a case. It's down to states to bring cases. It's down to bringing pressure to bear on the United Nations. But unfortunately, Blair has undermined the authority of the United Nations, having said he wanted a second resolution. Over and over again, we now know through Chilcot, who hadn't effectively been given the brief or didn't want to go there, as far as the illegal war aspect of it was concerned, we know beyond doubt that it had all been agreed 18 months before. 2002, he'd said, with you, whatever, in July of 2002. So we knew, all of us knew he was going to do it, and the American troops were on the ground and all the rest of it. And effectively, what needs to happen now, this is to answer the question you may have, is, yes, he still can be prosecuted. There's no time limit on this. For the war crimes that can be specified in the sense of the white phosphorus cluster bombs, depleted uranium, all of that, and other things as well, he can be prosecuted, but it needs power and pressure put together onto the International Criminal Court through the United Nations to get them to investigate and prosecute, because the evidence is there. We as individuals have tried over and over again, the petitions are still there. So it's one of the moves that has to be made. What appalls me is that when the House of Commons debated this the other day, the possibility of impeachment and all the rest, how many people turned up for the debate on Blair? 32 MPs. That tells you everything about our so-called parliamentary democracy. Well, I'm hoping that what we're living in now is a situation in which we all see through the fact that we've had a parliament with no democracy. We haven't had democracy. We're just about on the brink of seeing the possibility that perhaps through what's happening in the Labour Party, that ordinary people will recognise they can have a power through the vote of the referendum, whether you agree with it or you don't. Suddenly people woke up to the fact that at last they weren't going to be ignored. And I hope that Jeremy Corbyn isn't ignored. I hope that what he's tried to say, because whatever happens, he's opened the door in the way that Tony Blair closed it. So that's the legacy. I'm sorry I've got to go. Thank you.
Mike Mansfield, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we haven't got much time, so really on quickly, I'd like to introduce the panel this evening. Our first member of the panel, he was the former ambassador to Uzbekistan. He was sacked by Jack Straw for, unless I'm very much mistaken, focusing too much on human rights. Will you please welcome Craig Murray? Our second panelist, Lauren Booth. She's a writer, a broadcaster, and an activist on behalf of the Palestinians. What can I say? John McTiernan used to be a policy advisor to Tony Blair. Welcome to the Blair Picture. Mike's left. Well, one door shuts, another one opens. So maybe Ken Livingstone would like to join us. You're right, okay. And last but not least, the man who made the film, Mr. George Galloway.
Yay!
Okay, I've never done this before. I've never chaired anything in my life, but look, it would be so easy for any right-wing media person to look in here tonight and say, yeah, you know, left-wing bullshit, shut up, here we go, it's the same old crap again. I'm an actor. I get paid to do it. I'm also a part-time musician. I get paid to do that. So I have a vested interest in having a look at Tony Blair's life. He is both a failed actor and a failed musician. So he went into politics. Now I know that that man needed to be loved. He needed to be revered. Now, if you think, as a result of watching that film, that you're not going to get a case brought against him, then I'd like you to consider this. As a dyed-in-the-wool narcissist, Tony Blair is a dead man walking. He has no legacy. He is morally bankrupt. So we can actually enjoy his downfall. Yeah. Let's hope we get him to court, but if we don't worry. That man is in a living hell. Yeah. Right, now I've got that out of the way. I'm going to go straight to you, John, as a former policy advisor to Tony Blair. Do you still like him?
Yes.
Boo.
How?
Well, he's the best Prime Minister of my lifetime, and he is the greatest leader the Labour Party's ever had.
You're funny.
Look, I don't want this to become a bear pit. You know, John, explain yourself. Do you think that he is answerable as a war criminal?
No, of course not. That's gibberish, and even Michael Mansfield had to admit that.
Well, would you like to explain why?
Of course, Tony Blair is not a war criminal, as Michael Mansfield, even Michael Mansfield had to concede.
He said he was guilty of war crimes.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. For white phosphorus and depleted uranium.
Okay, look, I really want this to be
weapons.
conducted in a kind of grown-up manner. Now, John.
Why?
Look,
Why?
look, you can...
Get off the stage, you fool.
Please. No, look. I have to let John talk, all right? Please explain yourself, John.
Why?
Well,
Because I think it's important, John.
The days for reasonable conversations are all over.
Okay, my friend. Okay, no, listen. My friend.
No, like, I'm not your friend. The days for reasonable conversation to hear this nonsense are over.
Yeah, I want to hear what he's got to say, and then I want to hear you argue against it. Okay? That's what I want to hear. What you're doing is dividing and ruling. Now shut the fuck up. John. Come on, let him talk.
The Iraq War was a legal war. It was backed by United Nations Security Council resolution. It was the 17th United Nations Security Council resolution in regard to Saddam Hussein and weapons inspections. The war was on behalf of the United Nations. It was not in defiance of the United Nations. There's not a war crime committed. There's not a war crime for Tony Blair to answer. He is not a war criminal. Michael Mansfield admitted that before he went off. He did admit that. Neither Michael Mansfield nor anybody in this audience is a judge and jury on the issue of war crimes as an international criminal court.
We are entitled.
And there's no point in getting upset with me about the fact that Tony Blair is not a war criminal. It's your problem. It's your problem if you want to believe that, and it's a democracy. You believe what you want. He's not a war criminal.
I think you're right, mate. Shut the fuck up. George, you're talking shit. George, will you answer? First, leave the stage. You're finished.
First,
Let George speak,
we
please.
say that we should respect the courage of John McTernan in coming here tonight to face this audience after that film.
He's a psychopath.
I'm going to disagree with everything that John said, but it's important that we don't behave like the Blairites behave. of running out of town anyone with a dissident opinion. So let's be respectful, especially towards the one person on the panel who doesn't agree with most of us. I hope that you found the film a powerful document. I believe that it's important in every regard. It's a good piece of work. It's also a historical document of some importance. It's not the final word. It's not the final story, and if we'd had unlimited resources, we would have made an even better film. If you were one of those astonishing list of 5,000 people at the end of the film, then you should feel proud of yourselves, because without you, we couldn't have kick-started this project, and therefore we couldn't have completed it. Michael Mansfield didn't say that Tony Blair was not a war criminal. In fact, he said the opposite.
Yeah.
He said that the waging of aggressive war is not an agreed statute at the International Criminal Court, but that in the war there were, and he gave two examples, the use of fragmentation weaponry and phosphorus, and he added a third, which is slightly more contentious, depleted uranium. All three of those are war crimes and prosecutable at the International Criminal Court. And I believe that the day will come when those cases are brought. But in the short term, I happen to know, because I'm helping them to fundraise, that the bereaved families of British servicemen and women who were killed or maimed in the conflict are bringing court cases against Tony Blair. So he's going to see a lot of the inside of courtrooms over the next period. And that is part of the exercise of holding him to account. But it's only part. Keith Allen is right. In the court of public opinion, I think that Tony Blair is overwhelmingly condemned by people. And I'll come to another aspect of that in a moment. But this is not an exercise in kicking a man when he's down. Tony Blair is not down. As a matter of fact, he's £100 million up. And he's still controlling things in the Labour Party, as everyone who's watching the current travails of the party already knows. So whether or not Mr. Blair killed the Labour Party is yet to be seen. That he caused the deaths of a huge number of people then and since is not capable of argument. President Obama himself has made clear that the monstrous mutation of Al-Qaeda and ISIS is a direct result of the invasion and occupation of Iraq. So we'll keep up the pressure. I think this film is a useful part of that pressure. The families will be taking Blair to court, and international lawyers and others will continue to press the case for prosecution on an international level. I just give you this, and I've said it before, but I mean it even more this evening. As long as God gives me breath, I will not stop the campaign to hold Tony Blair to account for the crimes that he did. For two reasons. One, it is moral for people to be punished for wrongdoing. And even more importantly, if you are not punished for wrongdoing, why should the next group of leaders desist from wrongdoing when they see that you don't get punished and in fact you can become very filthy rich in the process?
Lauren, as an activist on behalf of the Palestinian people, do you think Tony Blair has contributed to making it a more peaceful or a more dangerous part of the world?
I'm just so angry right now. I am seething inside. I don't care about the money. You can take what you want off your chums at JP Morgan and in the banks in Israel, and I don't care. But not one tear on one child's cheek in Baghdad or in Gaza is worth what you're being paid. And that is something that we have to stop our leaders thinking that they can get away with. And I was sickened. I mean, it was like the worst political joke of the century that he went straight from causing these wars and this instability deliberately in the Middle East to becoming the Middle East Quartet, representative. And the justification that Israel uses for chemical weapons in Gaza is directly linked to what was done in Baghdad. I have heard it done by those trolls on the internet who support Israel and are paid for by the government there. Why are you complaining about white phosphorus in Gaza? Your government did it in Baghdad. What hell have we opened here, paid for by our taxes, given by our votes, and as yet unanswered for?
I won't go back to you yet, John, because it'd be too emotional. Craig, as a person who worked for the, do you work for the government, did you? Yes. What was your view of Tony Blair? Was he the greatest British Labour Prime Minister?
Hearing John talk about whether or not Tony Blair was a war criminal reminded me of a conversation I had in a Foreign Office. I'd been complaining about our using intelligence got from torture, from the torture chambers of the Kalimov regime, where people were boiled alive, where people were electrocuted, where people were raped with broken bottles. And I was called back for the meeting in the Foreign Office. And there the Foreign Office's chief legal advisor, Sir Michael Wood, told me it wasn't illegal for us to get the intelligence from torture, provided that we didn't specifically request that the individual be tortured. And Michael, who I knew, who I'd known for many years, I just looked at him and I said, Michael, for fuck's sake, you're talking about people being boiled alive and you're coming up with a legal nicety about did we actually ask for him specifically to be tortured, or did we just get the intelligence resulting from it without specifically asking him a question? When it comes to people, to children, hundreds of thousands of children dying, horrible, violent deaths as a result of this transaction, the idea that you can parse a nicety of law as to whether or not he can be tried in The Hague is irrelevant. Those children are dead and that man is evil.
Yes.
As it happens, technically, he can be tried. The Statute of Rome, which establishes the International Criminal Court, states that the crime of aggression is not subject to the jurisdiction of the court. That in itself is an acknowledgement of the existence of the crime of aggression. It doesn't say the alleged crime of aggression or the possible crime of aggression. And the crime of aggression is a well-established crime in international law, not least, of course, by the Nuremberg tribunals. And aggression is a crime, and was a crime, at the time that Tony Blair committed it. And frankly, nobody, I mean, even Michael Wood, I was talking of earlier, every single lawyer in the Foreign Office, and the Foreign Office had a department of 18 extremely good international lawyers, some of the best international lawyers in the world, every single one of them said it would be illegal to invade Iraq. Every single one. There's no doubt it was a fact which was withheld from the cabinet. A fact which almost certainly wasn't withheld from John McTernan. It was an illegal crime. It is absolutely normal in international law for tribunals, which did not exist at the time of the fact, to be constituted after the fact and to try the crime. As long as it's a crime at the time you commit it, the jurisdiction does not have to exist at the time you committed it. So, for example, the Nuremberg Tribunal did not exist as a tribunal at the time the crimes were committed. So the fact that at the time the crimes were committed, The Hague did not have the jurisdiction does not mean The Hague cannot be given the jurisdiction, or does not mean an ad hoc tribunal cannot be set up with the jurisdiction, because the crime was a crime at the time it was committed. So the answer is quite simply, yes, let's not forget, millions died. Millions died. It may take time, it may take a revolution in the international situation, but I think that revolution is coming. I think throughout the Western world, we are seeing an upswelling of revolt against neoconservatism and neoliberalism of the kind I never expected to see in my lifetime. I think that people are on the march everywhere, and I have no doubts that eventually the people will bring Tony Blair to justice. Thank you.
Ken, I'll throw to you because you have first-hand experience of Tony Blair, the greatest Labour Prime Minister of all time.
I don't think he's actually Labour. He wasn't a Tory. He was at Oxford. He never got involved in anything political, and very unusual given that was the early 70s. It was striking. I was amazed when I looked over and saw that John was here, because he knows he's not going to get much support from your audience. But he's here because he believes that what Tony Blair did was right, and he believes generally that Tony Blair was a great leader. And this is what worries me about what's happened to our politics. When I came into politics, it was filled with rather dull, ugly people who droned on about policy.
Bit like you, Ken.
Yeah, a bit like me. And we've moved into this world, it's all about charm and charm. When I met Tony Blair, he asked to see me just before I became Prime Minister. Very pleasant, very charming. I came away thinking, my God, you're not ready to be Prime Minister. And about 4 months later, he asked me to come and see him. He was obviously going to sound me out for a job. And I said, well, I don't see any point being in your government because no one's allowed to do anything. It's all run by you and Gordon and a couple of other people at the centre. And we had a very difficult and unpleasant time. And then there's all the ballot rigging about the mayoral selection, all that. And I suppose I think George's film's brilliant. It's much more damning than even I thought before I came here. But I'd like to see another chapter added to this, because when I got into politics, working class people had an influence over politics through the Labour Party. You came to your local meeting, you could select the candidate you wanted to stand for Parliament. You pushed motions through. They went to a conference and they became the policy of the party. And perhaps even more cynical than all of this is what was done to actually gut the Labour Party. And those embittered old Blairites who still believe he was right, who dominate the Labour Party, because for 4 elections under Blair and Brown, parties couldn't choose who they want. They had to choose from an approved list of people who'd gone to some bloody hotel on the south coast and been vetted over a weekend by all the party bureaucrats. That's why the Parliamentary Labour Party is so, not just to the right of party members, but to the right of ordinary people in this country. And it's why they're trying to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn and stabbing in the back day by day by day with all their eyes clear, because, as with John, they can't come to terms with the fact that no, this wasn't our greatest ever leader. And he did disastrous things, not just in the Middle East, but here in Britain. He didn't create good jobs for ordinary working class people. He didn't build, I mean, he owns 30 homes, but he didn't build any bloody councils in proud people. Yeah. It is a damning indictment, not just about what he did in the Middle East, but about what he did here in this country to his own people. And I feel a sense of shame, because he's part of my generation of politicians. And we grew up in a world where we were given free education, free healthcare, we could buy a home that we could afford. When I left school, every boy got a job. And what is my generation of politicians leaving to our children and our grandchildren? A world in which things get worse. And we've got to change that. So don't just come here to support George's film or denounce Tony Blair. Get involved in changing our bloody country again.
Okay, John. I'd like to apologise for turning on you like I did earlier on. It was wrong, I'm sorry. But surely, I mean, if you have a look at this panel, I mean, these are all intelligent, articulate people. Look at this audience, you know. they're real. They can't all be wrong.
Well, I for one feel a sense of shame that Ken Livingstone won't retire from public life. A sense of shame that a man who says that Hitler supported Zionism...
Be quiet! Be quiet! You moron!
Listen, hang on, John, please, excuse me, 1 second. 1 second. This is called give them enough rope, they will hang themselves. So I'm giving him the rope, okay? Just let him talk.
Yeah.
No, but you have to, in order to get hung, you have to be on a platform. John. I'm waiting for him, John.
You're going to keep on listening to me.
No,
Sorry about
you
it.
don't have
Sorry.
to.
I'm not going to get off the stage. I'm a guest here, George Galloway's, and I'm sorry if that offends you.
Please.
But I'm a guest
Okay,
of George
everybody.
Galloway's.
Okay, everybody, please. Just do me a favour, all right? Okay? Can we agree to give him 5 minutes?
No.
Okay?
No.
Can we give him 5 minutes? Okay? Please. Please. All right, 4. All right, 4 minutes. Okay? You've got 4 minutes, John. Please. And then let rip.
Of course, people are entitled to be wrong about Tony Blair. George is entitled to be wrong in making this film. Ken is entitled to be wrong, but he shouldn't be a public figure and be as wrong as he is in certain areas. Craig Oliver just told lies.
Oliver? Get his name right, you moron.
Craig told lies.
You got 3 minutes.
That's
Craig
a lie.
told lies. Millions of people were not killed in the Iraq War. He told lies that
Million
hundreds
plus.
and thousands of children were killed. I don't know where he gets his figures from. He made those up. Ken's claim that the average Labour MP is to the right of the British people is not confirmed by the opinion polls, which give the current Tory government a 16-point lead. And I know,
After the coup.
and all of you know too, that there will never be a chance to compare the record of Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister to the record of Tony Blair as Prime Minister, because Jeremy Corbyn will never be a Prime Minister of this country for all of his views, ranging from his support from the provisional IRA right through to his views on the economy, on immigration, on welfare, and on Trident. So,
How long left?
so I don't believe that it's wrong for you to hold opinions with which I disagree. You clearly believe it's wrong for me to hold opinions which you disagree with. Fair enough, that's your point of view. I came here and watched the film. It's meretricious and it's mendacious. But I didn't pay for the film to be made.
Time's
Many
up.
people will come and see it. It's not true. Most of what was said is not true. And I could go through
Corroborate
about
that.
it. I'm not going to go through and say, well, pick the holes in the argument.
You can't.
Tony Blair is not a war criminal and was an excellent Prime Minister.
Okay.
Shut him up.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'd just like to point out, right, that when you turn around to people like us and you say that the polls have just proved that the Tories are a certain percentage, it's not the Tories, it's fucking New Labour. That's who's in control of this country, New Labour. And that's the end of this discussion, ladies and gentlemen. I've got to close it now. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
No.
I won.
I'm really proud of all you did was shout it out.
Yeah, the guy down there, the woman
Yeah.
down there, the woman down the front.
Yeah, and didn't just sit there politely. Look at Craig and George.
You should just punch him.
I couldn't even get his fucking name right. Such a fucking cunt.